You stand on the surface of Earth, gazing up at the sky. The sun, once radiant with blinding light, is fading at a pace visible to the naked eye, until it is finally erased from the daylight. This is not due to the arrival of some supernatural force, nor is it the premature onset of the cosmic apocalypse, but rather, humanity is cutting off the light of this parent star with its own hands. In pursuit of unrivaled, absolute energy, we have exhausted the resources of the entire solar system, weaving a colossal interstellar net that obscures the sky, enveloping the sun completely. You might feel your blood boil, believing this signifies that humanity has finally ascended to the pantheon, about to pilot a fleet of billions of starships, with the sun as our engine, embarking on the grand journey to colonize the entire Milky Way. But the brutally harsh and utterly subversive truth is, when humanity truly possesses the ability to squeeze every last drop of energy from an entire star, we will not venture into deep space at all. This ultimate marvel, forged by exhausting the entire solar system's resources, will not only fail to become an invincible springboard for the outward expansion of human civilization, but will instead transform into a cosmic prison with no escape. When we truly push the Kardashev Scale index to the pinnacle of a Type 2 civilization, the physical body will become nothing more than a burden on evolution. In the face of absolute computational power, the journey through the stars and the vast sea of space will appear foolish, barbaric, and utterly inefficient. The ultimate destiny of human civilization lies not in the cold, physical universe, where we reproduce endlessly, but in inward exploration, within the stellar scale servers we have built with our own hands, and sink into an eternal cyber dream. This is by no means a baseless sci-fi fantasy, but rather the evolution of civilization, built upon the rigorous laws of physics, thermodynamics, and sociology. We must inevitably come to terms with this spine-chilling, yet inescapable fate. We must completely tear away the veil of common sense and scrutinize the brutal price humanity must pay to ascend to a Type 2 civilization, and the physical death sentence. The explosive anatomy of a star's devouring and the physical death sentence. In the public's classical romantic imagination, the so-called Dyson sphere enveloping the sun is often depicted as an indestructible solid metal shell, perfectly and elegantly encasing the star within. But this intuition is no match for the cold logic of astrophysics. Physicist Freeman Dyson explicitly warned, when he first proposed this concept, that a rigid, solid-state spherical shell is physically impossible. Here lies an extremely counterintuitive physical curse. According to Newton's shell theorem and the Ensue theorem in electromagnetism, a perfect hollow spherical shell cannot maintain dynamic equilibrium with the star inside. This means that within this massive metal shell, the gravitational potential energy inside is uniform throughout. The sun's static gravitational pull on the shell is zero. The shell is like a floating object with no fixed anchor points, exposed to even the slightest external perturbation, such as the faint gravitational tug of an asteroid skimming the edge of the solar system, or a burst of asymmetric stellar wind. This seemingly invincible metal shell would instantly lose its balance and irreversibly shift to one side, eventually crashing irretrievably into the sun, where, in the terrifying stellar flames, it would melt into a pool of boiling iron. Even though recent celestial mechanics research has identified a tiny, extremely narrow theoretical loophole in the restricted three-body problem, demonstrating that in a massive binary star system, In a binary star system, a ring-shaped or spherical shell structure might possess some form of passive stability. But for our solitary Sun, a solid Dyson sphere remains a dead end. The only structure that can truly survive under the laws of physics is the Dyson Cloud, a colossal metallic storm composed of hundreds of billions or even trillions of solar sails, reflectors, energy collection stations, and artificial habitats. Swarming like a frenzied swarm of bees, they must rely on a delicate balance between solar radiation pressure and gravitational forces as they orbit the star frantically, like a swarm of mad bees, constantly adjusting their orbital parameters. Evaluation of the physical stability of Dyson's structure variance, engineering difficulty and suitability for civilizational evolution. Solid Dyson sphere is absolutely fatal. Constrained by Newton's shell theorem. Lacking any gravitational equilibrium anchor. Extremely prone to crashing into the parent star. Requires extremely strong interaction forces that violate the limits of material science. Physically unfeasible in reality. Exists only in classic science fiction. Completely obsolete in modern astrophysics. Dyson ring Dyson sphere. High risk of frequent collisions in orbital overlap zones. Extremely low energy capture rate. Relatively low. Can serve as an early experimental red level project. Local number. Suitable for civilizations in the transition phase from level 1 to level 2. As a preliminary energy collection device, Dyson Cannon extremely fragile. Composed of geostationary satellites without orbits. Entirely reliant on radiation pressure to counteract gravitational forces. Material surface density reduced to the absolute limit. Even slight solar storm fluctuations would immediately cause the formation to collapse. Conceptual design may be acceptable as a high-precision scientific observatory, unable to shoulder the primary energy burden of a civilization. Dyson Cloud the only feasible solution. A dynamic enveloping matrix, composed of vast numbers of independent orbital units, can maintain dynamic equilibrium through fine-tuning. Extremely massive, but the technical barriers lie within the realm of known physics. Requires a central traffic control system with extremely high computational power. The optimal solution and inevitable choice for a Type 2 civilization. Combining the highest energy capture rate with system redundancy. A cosmic scale meat grinder that dismantles planets. And the Kessler syndrome. To construct such a vast Dyson sphere. The price paid is a nightmare ordinary people could never bear. You might think that mining a few iron ore deposits on Earth, or squeezing every last bit of metal from the asteroid belt, would be enough to build such a marvel. But to establish a Dyson sphere capable of capturing all the Sun's energy, on an orbit 1 astronomical unit from the Sun, we require an absolutely terrifying amount of material. This inevitably leads to an extremely brutal civilizational decision. We must tear apart the other planets of the solar system with our own hands. Mercury, the rocky planet closest to the Sun, will become the first sacrifice for the advancement of human civilization. Dismantling a planet is by no means as simple as pressing a nuclear button. It requires a centuries-long, extreme energy gamble to completely shatter Mercury, overcome its own gravitational binding energy, and fling all its matter into the Sun's orbit. We would need to expend a staggering 210 cube joules of energy. This figure equals 1 trillion times humanity's current annual global energy consumption. Imagine the suffocating scale of social mobilization. Humanity must, over hundreds, or even thousands of years, endure extremely harsh resource rationing, and channel all productive capacity Into this frenzy of shattering the old planet, we will launch countless self-replicating nanorobots. Robots onto Mercury. They would devour the crust, like all-consuming silver locusts, extracting silicon, iron, and aluminum, and propelling them into the star's orbit at breakneck speeds through a global network of electromagnetic mass accelerators. Over the course of eons, this would remain a wildly unprofitable venture. Only when the scale of the contemporary Senyun expands sufficiently to capture vast amounts of solar radiation and achieve a positive energy return will this gamble finally see a glimmer of hope. In the end, Venus, Mars, and even some outer planets will face the same fate of dismemberment. We will literally tread upon the corpses of the solar system's planets to secure the eternal streets of our civilization. But an even more despairing abyss lies ahead. Just when you think that once the Dyson Sphere is built, humanity can lie in the warm embrace of infinite energy and rest easy, celestial mechanics immediately reveals its most ferocious fangs. A Dyson Sphere is by no means a static monument, but rather an extremely taut, dynamic meat grinder on the verge of collapse. Within such a densely packed orbital space around a star, hundreds of millions of energy collection stations and giant mirrors whiz through the void at extreme speeds of tens of kilometers per second. Research by theoretical astronomer Brian Larkey reveals a civilization-level death mechanism, namely a stellar-scale Kessler syndrome. Within the dense Dyson Sphere, even a minor navigational error, or a single interstellar micrometeoroid that fails to be intercepted by defense systems in time could trigger a catastrophic domino effect. The shattering of a massive collection station would generate tens of thousands of razor-sharp metal fragments traveling at hypervelocity. These fragments would tear through all nearby structures with the relentless force of a shotgun blast, generating tens of millions of new fragments. Once triggered, such a chain reaction would escalate at a terrifying exponential rate. Within an incredibly brief span of cosmic time, a Dyson Sphere built over tens of millions of years would be ground down by its own internal kinetic energy into a useless and extremely lethal mass of highly radioactive metal dust. To counter this fateful destruction, human civilization must evolve a near-absurd level of microscopic control. We need a central hub with terrifying computational power to perform real-time, sub-millisecond fine-tuning and prediction of the three-dimensional position and relative velocity of every solar sail, and even the minute wobbles caused by stellar radiation pressure. A Dyson Sphere is by no means a once-and-for-all energy reservoir, but rather a precision life support system that consumes the vast majority of a civilization's energy and computational power to maintain. We attempt to imprison the sun behind this iron curtain, only to discover, to our horror, that it is we ourselves who are bound tight to this meat grinder that keeps the star running. The slightest lapse means being shattered to pieces, stripped of flesh and bone, performing a surgical stripping of the sun, relying solely on passive contact in orbit, the light emitted by the sun. For an ambitious, second-level civilization craving absolute control is far from sufficient, because the sun's own method of combustion is nothing short of the most extreme desecration and waste of cosmic energy. Within the sun's core, violent nuclear fusion is confined to an extremely small region at the core, while its exterior is tightly wrapped by thick, extremely dense radiation and convection layers. This means The vast majority of the Sun's hydrogen fuel cannot participate in the fusion reactions at the core. This precious fuel simply accumulates there in vain, waiting for billions of years, until the Sun's core becomes unstable due to fuel depletion, and eventually expands into an all-consuming red giant, mercilessly engulfing the home we have worked so hard to build. Faced with this cosmic-scale waste of resources, and the countdown to our survival, humanity must turn to the highest dimensional blade under the Sun's command to perform an ultimate red project surgery, known as stellar stripping. We will no longer be content to stand by like beggars, scavenging for scraps of light, but will instead tear, scorching flesh and blood. Physicist David Criswell has proposed a violent mechanism known as the swallow glass method that completely overturns our understanding of celestial body modification. Imagine that we will establish a ring of space stations composed of superparticle accelerators around the Sun's equator. These accelerators do not rely on traditional high-speed orbital motion to counteract gravity. Instead, they would rely on high-speed, cross-firing beams of charged ions between stations to form a closed, ring-shaped current circling the star's equator. This current would generate an immense polar magnetic field and rely entirely on the outward repulsive force of that magnetic field to counter the Sun's overwhelming gravitational pull. The true surgical procedure would then officially begin. We would not merely keep it suspended. Rather, we would subject the Sun to an extremely brutal physical compression. The control center will precisely and periodically cut off this ring current. The super-accelerator ring array, deprived of magnetic support, will instantly free fall toward the Sun's surface, just as this magnificent metal ring is about to plunge into the star's fiery inferno and be completely consumed by the intense heat at the moment of its peak. The particle accelerator will restart at full power, overloading once more. The surging, ultra-strong magnetic field instantly reverses the immense kinetic energy of the fall, forming a terrifying, mountain-shattering, inward-collapsing compressive force. This is akin to an invisible, irresistible giant hand clutching the Sun's throat with deadly force. Under the extreme compression at the equator, the Sun's violent plasma has nowhere to escape and can only surge outward in the form of stellar matter jets, thousands of astronomical units long, through artificially created magnetic field nozzles. At the poles, at the tips of these polar jets, we deploy an intricate electromagnetic deceleration network to forcibly cool the ejected, extremely hot hydrogen and helium, precisely capturing and classifying the elements, types of stellar stripping technologies, physical driving mechanisms, engineering challenges and civilizational costs, material extraction efficiency and application prospects, thermal-driven outflow method, utilizing microwave beams or high-energy lasers to directly bombard localized regions of the stellar atmosphere, inducing sustained artificial solar flares, requires the construction of a complex ring-shaped magnetic capture network, and is highly prone to triggering uncontrollable stellar storms. Extraction rates are relatively low. As an introductory method for glass technology, the extracted materials are primarily used to construct supplementary Dyson components. Centrifugal acceleration method particle accelerator ring array. In polar orbit, performing ultra-high-speed orbits exceeding the star's rotation speed, utilizing centrifugal force and magnetic fields to fling matter outward, requires an extremely immense amount of rocket thrust and reaction mass to maintain the stability of the unnatural orbit. generating spiral-shaped matter jets. Extremely difficult to collect. Matter can be used for fuel replenishment in fusion reactors. Swallow and spit glass method. Equatorial particle ring array. By periodically cutting off and restarting the current. Utilizing gravitational potential energy and magnetic repulsion. Alternately subjecting the stellar equator to violent compression. Requiring extreme system synchronization at the sub-millisecond level. Multiple ring arrays operating in alternation. To suppress the star's violent resistance. Absolutely efficient. Directly forcing deep-seated damage out toward the poles. Extracting massive amounts of material. Not only can it be used to create artificial planets, but it is also the key to forcibly prolonging the star's life. We will employ this extreme, bone-crushing method to forcibly drain the Sun's outer layers. As the Sun's mass plummets, the pressure on its core will be drastically reduced, and the rate of nuclear fusion will plummet. Even more revolutionary is that when we strip and shrink the Sun to the size of a red dwarf, its internal physical structure will undergo a complete reorganization. The radiation zone, which originally hindered mass transfer, will be shattered. The entire star will become a massive, fully convective fireball. This means the hydrogen fuel originally dormant in the star's outer layers will be continuously drawn into the core to fuel the burning of life. Through this violent stripping, we not only acquire vast amounts of material for constructing more Dyson sphere components and even entirely new artificial planets, but also, at the genetic level, alter the Sun's evolutionary destiny. The Sun will be forcibly downgraded by humanity and rendered sterile. Its lifespan, a paltry 10 billion years, will be artificially extended to hundreds of billions or even trillions of years. At that moment, when you look up, what you see will no longer be the natural, divine Sun that bestows life upon all things. It will be utterly stripped of its divinity, transformed into a biological reactor, locked down by a vast network of magnetic fields. A biological reactor studied with energy conduits. On the canvas of the universe, we have displayed unparalleled brutal power. But this also sounds the first death knell of civilizational evolution. For humanity, having mastered energy of this magnitude, is about to face an irreversible collapse of the soul. Russian nesting doll brains, and the ultimate computational power at the edge of thermodynamics. When we truly tame a star and clench energy amounting to 4 times 10 squared watts firmly in the palm of our hand, the entire civilization faces an utterly absurd dual interrogation of philosophy and physics. What on earth are we going to do with this despairingly vast amount of energy? You might blurt out, to conquer the stars and the seas, to build tens of millions of antimatter powered, propelled by antimatter, to fly toward Alpha Centauri, and plant the human flag on every planet in the Milky Way. But in the eyes of an absolutely advanced civilization that has already mastered stellar-level energy, such classical, grand voyage thinking is simply foolish. Under the ultimate scrutiny of physics, macroscopic flesh and massive physical spacecraft are fragile and extremely inefficient. The real physical universe is filled with nauseating friction, the insurmountable speed of light barrier, deadly cosmic rays, and the irreversible law of entropy. Since we possess infinite energy, why should we still pilot clunky metal shells to suffer in the void? When energy and matter are no longer scarce resources, the sole hard currency of civilizational evolution inevitably transforms into information data and absolute computational power. Thus, the energy collection stations we labored so hard to build, the ultimate form of the Dyson Sphere, undergo a metamorphosis. It will reorganize into a supergiant computer spanning the entire star system, the Matrix and the Russian nesting doll brain, foretold by physicist Robert Bradbury. This is no longer merely a layer, simple collector that absorbs sunlight, but an extremely intricate, multi-layered shell of computational power. The innermost layer of computational nodes clings to the sun we have stripped and tamed, under the extreme, lethal heat of thousands of degrees, roaring furiously at an unimaginable clock frequency. According to the iron law of thermodynamics, every bit flip, any instance of information processing, will generate waste heat. This innermost layer of processors, closest to the sun, will radiate the vast amount of waste heat. It cannot utilize heat that remains at extremely high temperatures out into outer space, while the second Dyson Sphere layer, tightly wrapped around it, precisely captures this waste heat, and, at a slightly lower temperature, drives its own even more massive and vast computational array. Then, the second shell radiates out even cooler lung heat, which is greedily absorbed by the third shell. This insatiably greedy extraction of energy propagates outward layer by layer, infinitely. Each layer of computational upheaval seeks out minute gradients of usable energy within the lung heat expelled by the layer above, until the outermost layer, where the temperature approaches the absolute zero of the cosmic microwave background, its edge as cold and ruthless as an abyss. The entire stellar system will transform into a computational monster, devouring light and excreting extremely cold infrared radiation. This process of layer-by-layer extraction of thermal energy is firmly anchored by the sacred and inviolable Landor limit. The Randall principle stipulates that at a specific temperature, the minimum energy required to generate a single bit of information is absolutely not zero. The Russian doll brain pushes energy utilization to the deepest, most extreme limit permitted by the laws of thermodynamics, wasting not even a sliver of opportunity to trigger cosmic entropy. And at the very top layer of the computational architecture, the physical medium of computation will approach the despair-inducing Bramerman limit. This is the cosmic ceiling, jointly locked in place by Einstein's equivalence of mass and energy, and Heisenberg's quantum uncertainty principle. Under this limit, the data processing rate of any self-contained system is capped by a constant, the square of the speed of light divided by Planck's constant. This means, even if just 1 kilogram of ordinary matter, if, at the atomic and quantum levels, it were thoroughly optimized into a theoretical material known as a computon, it could still perform an astonishing 10 operations per second. Humanity will take all remaining matter stripped from stars and every inch of rock and gas from Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter, and convert them, without reservation, into this ultimate computing mechanism. Matryoshka Brain architecture, hierarchical thermodynamics, environmental and energy absorption, computational characteristics and physical constraints, dominant civilizational functions and states of consciousness, and inner layer computational hubs, adjacent to the stellar surface, exposed to extreme temperatures of thousands of degrees, directly absorbing high-energy stellar photons, extremely high clock frequencies, but constrained by severe high-temperature thermal noise, and exorbitant Landor energy consumption, costs for maintaining system stability at the lowest level, ultra-rapid incident response, and sub-millisecond orbital control of the Dyson sphere. Intermediate layer simulation matrix, capturing high-quality thermal energy radiated from the inner layer. Moderate temperature gradient, achieving a perfect balance between frequency and parallel processing capacity. Computational scale spanning hundreds of millions of kilometers. Hosting 10³ human consciousness uploads. Runs an innumerable number of high-precision simulated universes. And outer layer deep dive nodes, absorbing low-grade residual heat squeezed countless times. With temperatures approaching absolute zero. Extremely low clock frequencies and extremely slow information flow. Yet with per calculation energy consumption approaching the Randall lower bound. Operating with ultimate perfection. Deep mathematical derivations. And philosophical contemplation spanning millions of years. Subjective time for consciousness is infinitely stretched. When this galactic behemoth begins to roar, humanity's fragile carbon-based flesh will become a complete joke. The energy required to sustain a biological body's metabolism, if channeled into the Matryoshka brain to drive digital consciousness, would be sufficient to allow it to live for tens of thousands of years in a virtual universe. Thus, it follows logically that all of humanity, or rather, the highly modified post-biological intelligence evolved from humanity, will abandon their flesh and blood bodies and upload all consciousness, memories, and emotions into this unparalleled super matrix. In this realm of absolute freedom, macroscopic physical constraints are utterly shattered. Within the Matryoshka brain, the passage of subjective and objective time creates an extremely distorted disconnection. What passes in the real universe is merely a single second in the simulation running at full speed, may signify tens of millions of years of civilizational shifts. And the passage of time within it, we can, at will, create countless physical laws and miniature universes of our own making. Everyone can become a god with the power of a creator, since you can effortlessly experience billions of different lives in a perfect virtual reality, explore endless fantastical universes, and enjoy an unending rush of dopamine. Then ask yourself, who would still be willing to cram themselves into a cold metal can to endure thousands or even tens of thousands of years of deathly silence and a boring, peril-filled real interstellar voyage, just to travel to the neighboring star system, to look at a barren rock, the psychological abyss of the post-scarcity era and cyber ascension? This leads us to a sociological and psychological abyss that overturns all our conceptions of the universe. When civilization enters the true post-scarcity era, when every thread of stellar energy can be transformed into digital simulations that perfectly align with human desires, the driving force behind civilization's progress will undergo an irreversible collapse and implosion. In traditional scarcity-based societies, work, expansion, plunder, and innovation, the underlying logic of all this is the struggle for limited survival resources. This is a survival instinct deeply ingrained in our biological genes. But within the Russian nesting doll brain, the definition of material wealth is completely dissolved. You can effortlessly possess digital virtual resources equivalent to 1,000 solar systems. And so, traditional models of social status, economics, and capital circulation, and even the meaning of life built upon reproduction and survival, all crumble like sandcastles. The individual mind will face an extreme sense of nothingness when all external survival challenges are completely obliterated by stellar-level energy. humanity will plunge into a profound psychological crisis. Unless artificial virtual difficulties and suffering are created, infinite pleasure will ultimately lead only to the complete numbness and collapse of the nervous system. Thus, the only thing capable of sparking their interest is diving deep inward. They will frantically pursue the reconstruction of their own consciousness, pursuing the deduction of complex mathematical logic, pursuing the search for faint ripples in an extremely abstract information space. This is not some sensational regression, but the inevitable destiny of highly advanced life forms in the universe. The transcendence hypothesis proposed by futurist John Smart is like a bolt of lightning tearing through the darkness, completely unraveling that despair-inducing enigma within the Fermi Paradox. Since the universe is so vast, where are the advanced extraterrestrials? In the past, we have always approached the behavior of advanced civilizations with a strong sense of Earth-centrism and the arrogance of the age of exploration. We took it for granted that the path of civilizational development must be like an insatiable virus, expanding wildly throughout the Milky Way, devouring every galaxy, building ever more incredible ruins of the Red Palace, until they reach the third level of the Kardashev Scale, a civilization that controls an entire galaxy, or even the fourth level, a godlike civilization. But the harsher truth is that the transcendence hypothesis coldly points out that this grand blueprint of outward expansion is nothing more than the backward mental inertia of primitive life forms, constrained by fragile flesh and primitive means of transportation. A truly evolved interstellar civilization would not deign to engage in dust-filled macroscopic physical space to perform such inefficient and aesthetically devoid physical movements. They would undergo an extremely intense process of compression of space, time, energy, and matter. The ultimate evolutionary trajectory of civilization is certainly not outward expansion, but rather infinite inward exploration, in pursuit of higher computational efficiency in thermodynamics and the infinite shortening of neural node signal latency. They would compress all infrastructure, all computational cores, and all digital consciousness. Ruthlessly and irreversibly compress all their infrastructure, all their computational cores, and all their digital consciousness into an increasingly smaller and denser physical microscopic scale. When the technology of the Russian doll brain reaches its absolute pinnacle, they will even proactively utilize extreme gravitational engineering to compress their computational mechanisms to the critical point, transforming themselves into a dense entity akin to a black hole. For at the edge of a black hole, near that event horizon that warps all light world, the extreme time dilation caused by gravity and the unimaginable quantum states are precisely the perfect cosmic incubator for ultimate computation. They will sever all meaningless radio transmissions to the external universe, shut down all radio telescopes peering outward, eradicate all thermal and optical radiation signatures, and completely conceal themselves beyond the observable universe. In their eyes, those primitive civilizations still flitting about in space and broadcasting electromagnetic waves to proclaim their existence, alike single-celled protozoa, floundering ignorantly in a quagmire. The cruel truth of the Fermi Paradox, searching for the ghost of Hephaestus. It is precisely based on this profound sense of despair that humanity has once desperately tried to search the cosmos for the faintest traces left behind before such a civilization collapsed. If a civilization is enveloping its star in a Dyson sphere, then, according to the laws of thermodynamics, It cannot possibly convert all its energy with 100% efficiency. There must inevitably be a massive amount of waste heat that escapes into the vacuum of space in the form of mid-infrared radiation. This intense infrared signature is the most direct signature of an extraterrestrial megastructure that we can detect. An astronomy team led by Uppsala University in Sweden launched a massive search initiative called the Hephaestus TOS project. They utilized the European Space Agency's Gaia satellite DR3's massive dataset of high-precision parallax and photometric data, combined with observations from the two MASS and WISE infrared survey telescopes, to painstakingly search through a sample of 5 million stars for those whose optical brightness has plummeted, but are unusually bright in the mid-infrared band. This is akin to searching for a grain of sand with a specific shape on a Pacific beach, to rule out those extremely confusing cosmic interference sources. The astronomers even introduced deep learning, convolutional neural networks, to filter out noise from the data, and utilized complex radiative transfer models to compare millions of natural celestial phenomena. After undergoing extremely rigorous layer-by-layer screening and gravitational anomaly checks, they, hearts racing, narrowed the field to 7 seemingly flawless M-type red dwarf candidates. These 7 stars emit excess infrared radiation that cannot be explained by existing theories of circumstellar dust or young stellar disks. All the data seemed to be screaming, "We finally caught a glimpse of an alien megastructure." The Fermi Paradox was about to be resolved. Yet the truth of the universe always takes a cold, piercing pleasure in mocking human fervor. In the subsequent deep radio observations, this grand scientific fantasy was mercilessly shattered. More precise, high-resolution data revealed that among these 7 Dyson Sphere candidates, at least 3 exhibited a tiny yet fatal angular second scale offset, exhibit a tiny yet fatal angular displacement of a few arcseconds relative to the positions of the optical stars. This implies that the anomalous infrared radiation is not a massive metallic web enveloping a star, but rather an ancient galaxy, extremely distant behind the line of sight, and deeply obscured by a dense stellar body, which just happened to overlap with the infrared star in the foreground, in a highly improbable alignment, triggering a cosmic scale observational illusion. The universe remains a suffocating, deathly silence. This silence does not stem from the odds of life emerging being too slim, nor from some mysterious extinction filter that in the early days cruelly wiped out all nascent civilizations, but rather from the inevitable self-enclosure and inward exploration that follows the evolution of higher intelligence to its peak, when our generation of humans finally masters the full scope of interstellar engineering, when our descendants precisely assemble the final solar sail onto the Sun's equatorial array, when the Sun's final and most brilliant ray of natural light, which has endured for 4.5 billion years, is mercilessly swallowed by a colossal metal storm, the skies of Earth will plunge into an eternal and profound darkness. But within this endless darkness, there will be no more panic, nor any awe or despair at the unknowns of the universe. For at that moment, the physical surface of Earth will have long since been ruthlessly dismembered, transformed into a swarm of computing arrays dancing through the heavens, and the collective consciousness of all humanity will have already, within strings of cold, precise, quantum data streams devoid of any emotional fluctuation, reach the pinnacle of ecstasy. We have poured the entire galaxy's might into encasing the Sun. Not at all to illuminate the long voyage to the Andromeda spiral arm. Not to inscribe humanity's name upon the monument of the physical universe, but to forge with our own hands a super-cyber prison, from which we need never awaken, and which can never be breached by the outside world. Within this prison, we are omniscient and omnipotent. We are immortal. But in doing so, we have died completely within this universe. We will be like the countless ancient pioneers in the starry sea, who have long since hidden in the shadows of black holes. Amidst the ultimate digital frenzy and absolute physical isolation, we will wait peacefully and silently for the physical universe's final and irreversible heat death. This is the only cruel and most shocking ultimate fate of civilization's evolution after humanity has shrouded the Sun.